why should we amend? Why should we overhaul this constitution?
So one of the things we are saying is that because a lot of our political problems and some of the assumptions we have made in putting in place this particular constitution have clearly failed. One, we want a limited government. By that we mean an executive that is checked. So we wanted a constitution that thrives on a system of checks and balances. But if today so many of the political actors or persons are calling it an executive or an imperial presidency, then we have failed in properly transition from a dictatorship into a democracy. Then if we are also benching the entirety of our constitution on a particular set of arrangements where certain institutions check each other, and the way in which politicians have subverted that process is to make sure that you subvert the institutions themselves. So one of the gambles we make is that the parliament will check the executive, then the judiciary will check both of them.
Yes.
But in fact, we are now a lot of times we talk about a scratch your back arrangement that exists between the executive and the parliament.
Instead of checking
but
each
we also
other.
have to question whether or not, if we wanted the two institutions to check themselves, whether they have done that. One of the first things. The second thing is that we wrote a document which cut out the people from the process. And by this I mean is, when you take the constitution, there's no place for how people can make suggestions for reviewing or changing any parts of the constitution, which is what we call the popular initiative. That doesn't exist. We've cut out the people from the lawmaking process itself because we say it's a representative government, meaning that even if you want to do a petition to parliament, you can't do it. Parliament now would write back to you and say, that is not the proper way. The proper way to do it, by which they mean, is that a member of parliament must take it and lay it on the table and move it as their own motion. So it's not a people's thing.
When you say the popular initiative, are you looking, for example, at what we know pertains in Kenya, where citizens can actually, begin the process to change the constitution rather than something that must start from the executive?
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things we are saying is that in terms of all these assumptions we've made as to how to move our democracy forward, if it has become easy to all you have to do is corrupt those institutions or take charge of them, then you have completely taken over our democracy. We can prevent that by creating pathways for the people to come into the process. And that pathway has to be one through the popular initiative in changing the constitution, but also through the lawmaking process. That they can directly intervene, like happens in the UK, where you do a petition process and need to get 100,000 signatures. The parliament must debate the issue.
Okay.
That's one thing we don't have. Another ways in which you can bring the people back into the process is that in the US, they have what they call the legislative hearings. We now have introduced sort of memoranda which people can submit, but you have to have those hearings, and it's required that you must meet all those groups in the ways in which people come before them and defend these ideas, and you have all these televised before any law is passed. That brings again the people into the process.
Right.
Then you have, recall elections, where persons being dissatisfied with you can gather votes and demand that a by-election be held on that. So there's so many ways in which you can bring the people back.
We saw an example of the recall recently in the US.
Absolutely, in California, right? So that's different ways in which, because we have certain assumptions which do not allow the people to come into the process, we don't improve our democracy with the energies of these people who do not necessarily want to align with political parties. So a lot of our best intellectual brain are outside of the political process.
So that